Buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep into a story that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about identity. Two kidnappings, two families, and a mystery spanning decades.
It's a case that shows how powerful DNA can be, rewriting personal histories, unearthing secrets, and making us confront the truth about who we are.
We'll start back in 1964 with the kidnapping of baby Paul Fronzac.
Okay.
Picture yourself as Dora Fronzac, a new mother in a Chicago hospital, overjoyed with her day-old son, pure bliss.
Right.
But it's about to turn into every parent's worst nightmare.
The sources paint a scary picture. During a normal feeding, a woman dressed as a nurse comes into Dora's room. She tells Dora that the pediatrician needs to examine Paul.
Oh, wow.
Dora, trusting and vulnerable, hands over her baby.
She has no idea.
No idea. She's become the victim of a carefully planned kidnapping.
Witnesses say they saw this woman around the maternity ward for hours, even the day before.
Yeah.
It's like she was studying everything, the routines, the staff, waiting for the right moment.
This wasn't some random act. The sources suggest it was planned very carefully. This imposter even talked to other babies, asked questions. She really blended in.
It's a scary thought. How easily someone can take advantage of a vulnerable situation.
Exactly.
And then she just disappears. The hospital is in chaos. They launch a huge search. All of Chicago is on edge. Baby Paul is gone. No trace.
The Fronzac story really shows how strong hope can be, but also how heavy uncertainty is. Can you imagine not knowing if your child was safe? If he was even alive?
It's unimaginable.
For years, they followed every lead, every possible sighting. They wouldn't give up hope.
Now, fast forward to 1965, a year later, and hundreds of miles away in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay.
A little boy, they called him Scott, is found alone outside a busy department store. He's dressed nicely, but you can tell he's been neglected. He even has a black eye.
Oh, no.
It's clear whoever left him wanted him found.
It's strange. You have this seemingly planned abandonment, leaving him where he'd be found quickly. But those signs of neglect, it makes you think there's more to the story.
And this is where a really sharp detective comes in. He remembers the Fronzac case and notices Scott looks a lot like baby Paul.
He does.
Yeah. So he contacts the authorities in Chicago, and they start comparing what little identification they have.
This is the 1960s, right? No DNA testing yet.
No, they're using blood tests.
Wow.
And believe it or not, ear-shape comparisons.
Yeah.
To see if Scott could be Paul.
They were really dedicated trying to solve this with such limited tools.
And get this, the blood tests don't rule out a match.
Really?
Yeah. The Fronzacs, clinging to that hope, travel to New Jersey.
It must have been emotional.
Oh, incredibly so. Dora is sure it's her Paul. And while some investigators have their doubts,
Right.
the Fronzacs are allowed to adopt Scott and go back to Chicago as a family.
That makes you wonder, what made Dora so certain? Was it a mother's intuition?
Maybe?
A desperate need for her lost child? Or were there actual similarities that convinced her?
It's a question that would stay with Paul, the boy raised as Paul Fronzac, for years. He never quite felt like he belongs, like a piece of a puzzle that didn't fit.
I see.
But it wasn't until decades later that he would uncover the truth.
The truth about who he really was.
Exactly.
And the DNA test says he's not a Fronzac.
After all those years believing he was their son, the truth comes out. But if he isn't Paul Fronzac, who is he?
This is where genetic genealogy becomes so important. Imagine you can use your DNA to trace your family history, connect with family you never even knew.
Like a modern-day treasure hunt.
Right, but the treasure is your own identity. And here it led to a big discovery. Paul's real name was Jack Rosenthal, and he had a twin sister, Jill.
Wow, a twin.
A whole new chapter opens up. We dive into the Rosenthal family history, and it's complicated. Relationships, maybe abuse, and so much secrecy around those twins.
Yeah, the sources describe a difficult childhood for the twins. Relatives talk about neglect. Some even suggest abuse.
Yeah.
There's this one chilling story from a babysitter who found the twins locked in a crib, filthy and clearly distressed.
It's awful to think they might have been going through all that even before they disappeared.
And remember that black eye Scott had when he was found in Newark.
Yeah.
The same babysitter remembers seeing Jack with a similar injury before they vanished.
That's a key detail. It connects Scott and Jack for sure, but it also makes you wonder.
About the abuse.
Yeah. Was that injury a sign of what was happening in the Rosenthal home?
As we look closer at the Rosenthal family, there are conflicting stories, unreliable memories.
Makes sense. It was a long time ago.
Some relatives thought the twins were intellectually disabled, which we know isn't true. Others hinted at dark secrets, even that one of the twins might have died,
It's like I said before, memories can be tricky.
especially with trauma and family secrets.
Exactly. You have to think about the people involved, their biases, their reasons for saying things.
So now we have Jack, knowing his true identity. He's dealing with the shock of his past and desperately wants to find his sister Jill. He starts searching everywhere, following every lead he can find.
Trying to put the pieces together.
Exactly. But Jill's fate is still a mystery. There are rumors of a terrible accident, maybe a cover-up,
But nothing solid.
nothing concrete. It's like she just vanished. Imagine how Jack must have felt. He finds out about his stolen identity, and then he has to deal with not knowing what happened to his twin sister.
It's a lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
And just when you think this story can't get any crazier, DNA testing drops another bomb.
Another one.
Decades after Paul Fronzac was kidnapped, a man named Kevin Batty from Michigan is identified as the real Paul Fronzac,
No way. So the real Paul Fronzac was out there this whole time.
living with a different name. It turns out Kevin was raised by a woman named Lorraine Fountain. She had ties to Chicago and might have been involved in the kidnapping.
This is unbelievable.
Some sources even suggest Lorraine had connections to organized crime in Chicago back then. Maybe that's why Paul was kidnapped.
That's a pretty big claim. Is there any real evidence to back that up?
That's what we're trying to figure out. We had to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Right, of course.
So we looked into Kevin's life, the life he lived with a stolen identity. It was rough. Lots of struggles with alcohol and a tough relationship with Lorraine.
Oh, that's sad.
And tragically, he died just a few months after finding out who he really was.
He never got to connect with his real family.
He didn't. It makes you think about all the ripples these events create. One action can affect people for generations. Kevin's story answers some questions, but also makes the mystery even deeper.
It's hard to imagine what Kevin went through finding out who he was so late in life. And he never even got to meet his real family.
It really makes you think about the ethics of these DNA discoveries. What happens when everything you believed is shattered? When families have to face such painful truths?
It's a tough balance. The right to know where you came from versus the potential for so much hurt and disruption.
It really shows how this technology is changing things. It's not just about solving mysteries anymore.
Right. It's about understanding who we are, where we come from.
This case is like something out of a movie. So many twists and turns. Jack, raised as Paul looking for his twin. The Fronzacs reunited with their son, only to lose him again.
Right.
And then there's Lorraine, the woman who raised Kevin.
Still so much mystery around her.
Could she have been involved in the kidnapping?
It really challenges how we see identity and family, how fragile our sense of self can be when everything we thought we knew is wrong.
So where does this leave us? What have we learned from all this?
It shows how powerful uncertainty can be and how much we need to understand our origin.
To know where we come from.
Exactly. Imagine living for decades feeling like something's off, then discovering your whole life was a lie.
It makes you think about nature versus nurture. How much of who we are is our genes? How much is how we were raised?
These DNA advancements can answer these big questions. They can connect families across the world, bring lost relatives together.
It's incredible. But it comes with a responsibility.
Definitely.
The truth can be a blessing and a curse.
It's true.
There's still so many questions. Will Jack find Jill? What was the kidnapper's motive?
Was Lorraine working alone? Was anyone else involved?
What about those rumors of a mob connection? Are they true or just more speculation?
Maybe one day we'll know. With more investigation, new technology, who knows? But for now, it's part of the mystery.
This has been an incredible journey. Decades of mystery, heartbreak, resilience. What struck you most about this case? What are you still wondering about?
This case shows how truth can be stranger than fiction. The search for identity is full of surprises. We may not have all the answers, but the search for truth, the need for connection, that hope for closure, that's what makes this story so powerful.
And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating story.